I was driving cross-country late at night, my eyes heavy with exhaustion, when I pulled into a rest stop to stretch my legs and grab a drink. The lot was nearly empty, just a few trucks scattered under the harsh fluorescent lights. I parked and stepped out of my car, the cold air biting at my skin. That's when I noticed the van. It was parked far from the others, almost in the shadows, its windows dark and tinted. A figure sat inside, watching me. His eyes were locked on me, unwavering. He didn't move, didn't even blink, just stared. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I brushed it off. It was late, and I was probably just overthinking things. Still, I quickened my pace, hoping to shake the unease that had settled in my stomach. I walked into the small convenience store, grabbed a drink, and tried to push the feeling out of my mind. When I came back outside, the van was still there. The man was still inside. But now, he wasn't just staring at me. He was watching every movement, every step I took. His gaze felt like it was boring into my skin. I hurried back to my car, trying not to look in his direction. My hand was shaking as I unlocked the door, but before I could get in, I saw him. The man from the van was stepping out of his vehicle, walking toward me at a slow, deliberate pace. My heart raced. My mind screamed at me to get in and lock the doors, but I couldn't move. My feet felt like they were stuck in concrete as he got closer, his expression unreadable. I finally managed to force my door shut, lock it, and breathe a little easier. But then he stopped, standing right next to my window. I could see him more clearly now, tall, with a scruffy beard and a worn jacket. His eyes were cold, calculating. Then he leaned down, pressing his face against the glass, his breath fogging up the window. "I wouldn't leave if I were you," he whispered, his voice low, almost a growl. My heart slammed against my chest. Panic surged through me, and without a second thought, I slammed my foot on the gas, peeling out of the lot. I glanced in the rearview mirror, but the man wasn't there. He didn't follow. Relief flooded through me, but the tension in my body didn't ease. I kept driving, telling myself it was just a weird encounter, that I was fine. But as I passed a few miles down the road, I noticed something strange. The same van was behind me now, its headlights eerily bright in my mirror. I sped up, thinking it was just my nerves, but the van stayed with me. No matter how fast I went, it was right there, matching my every move. My pulse quickened as I turned off the main road, taking sharp corners, trying to lose him. The van followed, each turn syncing with mine, never losing ground. Finally, in a desperate bid, I pulled off onto a narrow side road, hoping to shake him off. But just as I did, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The van didn't follow. It had stopped, right at the edge of the road, blocking the only way out. And then, as I sat frozen in my car, the headlights of the van flickered off, and a figure emerged from the darkness. I froze. It wasn't the man from the van. It was me. My heart stopped. The figure that emerged from the van wasn't the man. It was me. I blinked, hoping my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no, it was unmistakably my face, my posture, my exact movements. The woman stepping out of the van looked exactly like me, down to the jacket I was wearing. But her eyes were empty, hollow. There was no life in them. It was like I was staring at my reflection, but something had gone horribly, terribly wrong. I couldn't breathe. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. This couldn't be real. I was alone. I had to be. But she moved toward me, slow and deliberate, as if drawn by some invisible force, and my hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, unable to tear my eyes away from her. She stopped just outside the driver's side window, inches from me. Her face was the same as mine, yet utterly wrong, a twisted, empty version of myself. I could hear her breathing now, heavy and shallow, like she was trying to mimic me. No, trying to replace me. My own breath caught in my throat as she leaned toward the glass, her cold eyes meeting mine. "I'm not leaving," she whispered, her voice eerily familiar, but laced with a coldness that sent a chill through my entire body. Panic surged through me. My hands trembled as I fumbled with the door lock, but before I could act, the woman stepped back, as if giving me space. Then she smiled. It was not a warm, comforting smile, but a sharp, knowing grin, one that sent a jolt of fear through me. I pressed my foot down on the gas, my eyes glued to her as I sped past, tearing down the narrow road. My mind screamed that I needed to get away, but my heart was pounding in my ears, making it hard to think clearly. I glanced in the rearview mirror. the woman was gone. For a moment, I thought I'd escaped, but then I saw it. In the distance, just ahead of me, the van reappeared, parked across the road at a sharp angle. The headlights flickered on once again, blinding me as I slowed down instinctively. There was no way around it. My stomach sank as I realized I was trapped. I stopped the car, my hands shaking violently on the wheel, the oppressive weight of dread closing in on me. The woman from the van was standing by the vehicle now, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, watching me. I couldn't tear my eyes away. Then I heard it, a muffled voice calling my name as if from far away. I jerked my head to the side, but there was no one else in sight. It was just her. The woman smiled again, but this time it was a grin of triumph. "You should have stayed at the rest stop," she said, her voice a twisted echo of my own. Suddenly I saw something in her hand, a set of keys, the same ones I'd used to lock my car. She was holding them like they were a trophy, spinning them around her finger as if she knew exactly what would happen next. I froze, my throat tightening. No, this can't be real. But then I heard the unmistakable sound of my own voice, my actual voice, coming from the row behind me. "You shouldn't have come here," it whispered, low and chilling. I spun around in my seat, but no one was there. The voice continued, growing louder and clearer. "It's already too late." I looked back at the woman. She had moved closer to the car, her grin widening. Her hand reached out toward me, and in that instant I understood. The woman in the van wasn't a stranger. She wasn't just some eerie reflection. She was me, or at least she had been me. Somehow, someway, she had replaced me, stolen my place. I reached for the door handle, my entire body trembling as I tried to pull it open, but the lock wouldn't budge. The keys in her hand twirled one last time before she dropped them to the ground with a soft clink. I couldn't escape. The headlights of the van suddenly flared brighter, blinding me, and then darkness. I heard the car door open behind me. A cold breath brushed against my ear. "Welcome back," the voice whispered. I turned, and in the reflection of the car window, I saw myself, but this time my eyes were empty too. It was the middle of the night, and I was exhausted. I decided to stop at a rest stop to get some rest and stretch my legs. I parked, locked my car, and walked to the nearby convenience store. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, and the rest stop was eerily quiet for a Saturday night. As I grabbed a coffee, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I glanced around, but the few people there were either asleep in their cars or talking in hushed tones. I brushed it off as my tired mind playing tricks on me. When I came back outside, I noticed a man sitting in his car in the spot next to mine. His car engine was off, and he wasn't moving. He was just staring straight ahead, his hands gripping the wheel. I thought it was odd, but I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe he was just waiting for someone. I slid into my car, locking the door quickly, but something didn't feel right. I glanced over at him again. His eyes were fixed on me. He hadn't moved a muscle. A shiver ran down my spine. I started the engine, hoping to drive away, but as I put the car in reverse, I saw him pull out of his spot and begin to follow me. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but when I made a right turn, so did he. I made a left onto a quieter street, and sure enough, his car matched my turn, never breaking the pattern. My heart raced. I had to get away. I pushed my car faster, trying to lose him in the maze of rest stop roads. But every move I made, he mirrored it, like a shadow stuck to my every turn. I could feel the panic creeping in as I pulled onto a main road, speeding up, hoping to shake him off. I glanced in my rearview mirror to see if he was still behind me. His headlights were barely visible in the distance, but he was still there, tailing me with precision. The silence in my car was deafening, only broken by the hum of the engine and the occasional hiss of the tires on the pavement. I turned onto a side street, then another. I was frantic now, weaving between cars, trying to lose him. When I finally felt like I was free, I slowed down and took a breath. There was no sign of him in my rearview mirror. I thought I'd lost him. But then, just as I turned onto a familiar street, I saw him again. His car parked on the side of the road, facing me. The same man still staring. My blood ran cold as I slowed to a stop, wondering how he could have possibly gotten there. Before I could react, my phone buzzed in the passenger seat. A text message popped up from an unknown number. "I'm closer than you think." Suddenly, I heard a soft knock on my window. I froze. My pulse pounded in my ears as I turned slowly to face the man who was now standing outside my car. He smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly who I was. "I've been waiting for you," he whispered through the glass. I stared at the man, my heart hammering in my chest. He was standing just outside my car, smiling that unnerving, predatory smile. His breath fogged the window, and I could see the faint outline of his face as he leaned closer. I locked the doors again, even though I had already done so. I wasn't sure if it would help, but it was the only thing I could think of to do in that moment. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice shaking. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached down and pulled something out of his coat pocket. Something small and flat. My stomach dropped as he held it up to the window. It was a photo of me taken at the rest stop. I didn't remember anyone taking it, but there I was, walking out of the convenience store, looking exactly like I had just moments ago. "I've been watching you for a while," he said in a low voice, as though this was a casual conversation. "I know everything about you, your car, your route, where you like to stop. I know exactly what you're thinking." The air around me felt thick, suffocating, and I couldn't seem to move. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. This wasn't a coincidence. This man had been following me for far longer than I realized. My mind raced, trying to figure out how to escape. Then, without warning, he stepped back from the car and turned his back to me, casually strolling down the sidewalk like he was walking away. I didn't know what he was doing, but I wasn't about to waste time figuring it out. I had to get out of there. I slammed the car into drive, tearing out of the parking spot and speeding down the road, my tires screeching against the asphalt. I didn't dare look back. I just kept driving, faster and faster, until the city lights started to fade in the rearview mirror. I didn't stop until I found a well-lit 24-hour gas station just outside of town. I pulled into the lot, my hands still shaking as I turned off the engine. I needed to breathe. I needed to think. I got out of the car and walked over to the payphone near the station, hoping to call for help. But as soon as I dialed, I froze. A familiar voice crackled on the other end of the line. "Did you really think you could get away?" he asked, calm as ever. "I told you I'd be waiting for you." I yanked the phone away from my ear, terrified, but I wasn't sure what to do next. This had gone too far. Suddenly, I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. Slowly, I turned around, every muscle in my body tensed and ready to flee. But it wasn't him. It was a police officer, his hand resting on his holster. "Are you okay, miss?" he asked, his voice steady and professional. I nodded quickly, unsure of what to say. The officer looked at me with concern, sensing that something was off. "Someone called in about a woman in distress," he said, glancing around the parking lot. "You seem a little shaken up." I couldn't explain everything that had happened, not yet. I barely understood it myself, but I was done running. This had gone on long enough. "I'm fine," I managed to say, forcing the words out. "But there was someone. He's been following me. I think he's been watching me for a while." The officer's expression grew more serious. "Okay, we'll take it from here. Stay here while I check the area." As he walked off, I felt a small sense of relief, but it was quickly replaced with dread. If he was still out there, still watching me, there was no guarantee I was truly safe. My mind raced back to that photo he'd shown me, the one he'd taken when I wasn't looking. It meant he knew more than I ever realized. The officer returned a few minutes later, shaking his head. "There's no sign of him. No car, no man." "What do you mean? He's out there. He's been following me." My voice cracked as I spoke. The officer gave me a sympathetic look, but shook his head. "We've checked the area. There's no one around. Are you sure you didn't just imagine it? Maybe it's just stress from the drive." I didn't know what to believe. The fear in my chest hadn't gone away, and the feeling that I was being watched was stronger than ever. But the officer seemed confident, so I reluctantly agreed to let him check my car for any signs of tampering. Everything was normal. "You're free to go, ma'am," he said, offering a small smile. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to call us." I drove away from the gas station, my thoughts clouded with confusion. Had it all been a product of my mind? Was the man in the car really following me? Or had I been too tired and paranoid to see things clearly? As I made my way home, I kept looking in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights in the distance, but there was nothing. I pulled into my driveway, exhausted and on edge, but finally safe. As I walked to my front door, I noticed something strange on my doorstep. A package, wrapped in brown paper. There was no return address, no name, nothing but a small note attached. You're never really alone. I froze. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and the chilling realization hit me all over again. It wasn't over. He had found me,